Hey there, I'm Kristen with ICStarsQuilting.com. Let's talk a little bit more about jelly rolls. We've been talking about jelly rolls for about 5 weeks, 6 weeks? I don't remember. We've been talking about jelly rolls for a little bit. If you're just coming into this video, go back, look at the description down below, see if you can find the other jelly roll videos. I will link everything down below that I'm talking about in this video, okay? I also want you to know that if you have not RSVP'd for the jelly roll party that I'm gonna have, what are you waiting for? It's gonna be so much fun. I have prizes to give away and all kinds of good stuff. That is also linked in the details down below. I get emails that ask, hey, what if I wanna make a jelly roll quilt this size? What if I have 3 jelly rolls? How big a quilt will that make? Now my answer to that question is not always a popular answer, okay? It doesn't ever make anybody excited or get like really happy, because my answer is, you gotta do the math, okay? You have to do the math. And I'm with you. I'm a creative soul. Math is not my strong point, okay? I can do math when it comes to quilts, all right? Because I know if I do the math now, then I'm not gonna have to worry about coming up with some weird funky size quilt afterwards, okay? It's all gonna be taken care of and it's gonna be okay. In order to take this roll of fabric, hold on, I don't have a roll of fabric with me. Okay, in order to take this roll of fabric and turn it into a gorgeous quilt, you're gonna have to do a little bit of math. I can't look at this and tell you what size jelly roll it's gonna make. Actually, that's a lie. I can because I know, because I've done the math before. But by the end of this video, you're gonna have specific instructions, specific formulas. It's not super complicated, but you do have to do just a little bit of math, okay? So you're gonna be able to know exactly what size quilt you're going to make with what size jelly roll you have. Or if you're making your own jelly rolls, I have a formula for that as well. Because like this project right here behind me, it's a big one, okay? It's a big jelly roll quilt. But I didn't make these strips. I actually cut these strips from yardage, okay? So these strips are not 2.5 inches wide. They're actually, I think they're 3.5 inches wide. Yeah, they're 3.5 inches wide. So those strips are bigger than these strips are. And I was able to calculate how big I needed to make it. That right there it's ginormous. That is only folded in half, okay? So it's gonna be a big quilt, but it's gonna be beautiful, right? So let's look at the formulas for how you can do each size. We're gonna go over a baby size quilt, we're gonna go over a throw size quilt, we're going to go over a queen size quilt, and for all of you adventurous quilters out there, a king size quilt, okay? That one is a big quilt. We're also going to go over, if you want to take on a project like I did right here, which is I want to cut my own strips out of yardage. And truthfully, on a big quilt like that, you lose a lot of fabric in the yardage because every time you sew a seam, you lose 1/2 inch, right? If you do a 1/4 inch seam, you're going to lose 1/2 inch on the top and 1/2 inch on the bottom. So all of those strips are going to end up at 2 inch strips instead of 2.5 inch strips, right? So it goes to say that if you make it at 3.5 inch strip, those strips are going to come out to 3 inches, right? So you're still losing a little bit of fabric, but you still have these big chunkier things that are going to make up a bunch. Just trust me on that, okay? It makes sense when you see it on paper. Let's go over each quilt. Okay, it's easier for me to write it out and explain it to you rather than just throw a whole bunch of numbers and facts and all kinds of weird things up on the screen. So let's try it this way, okay? The first size that we're gonna go over is the baby size quilt. If you're wanting to make a baby size quilt, it's going to be roughly, but close to 32.5 inches by 50 inches. Okay, that's going to be like your finishing size. It may be a tiny bit smaller than that. It may be a tiny bit bigger than that, depending on if you've got your seams exactly at 1/4 inch, or you fudge it sometimes, or you use multiple different fabrics. You want to get in somewhere in that range. To get a baby size jelly roll quilt in the standard form, in the example like I did in this link right up here, you're going to need 20 40-inch strips. Okay, that's gonna get you to this size right here. Now, something that I like to do is I like to cut my strips in half and make them smaller pieces rather than the huge long 40-inch strips. What that does is it gives the quilt more of a mixed look. Cutting those strips in half, you'll need 40 20-inch strips. That's going to give you the same thing, even though you're going to lose just a little bit in the seams when you sew those 20-inch strips together. You're going to lose a little bit in the seams when you sew those 40-inch strips together as well. Okay, so this is what you're going to need for the baby size quilt that's going to end up at this size right here. The shorter the strips are, the more busy that your quilt is going to look, the more fabric variation and colors, the more that the fabric is going to overlap with other colors, and it's going to allow for more of a pattern. So this is what you need for your baby size quilt. Let's move up to a lap size quilt. For a lap size quilt, you're going to want something that is going to be about 50 inches by 64.5 inches. For this, you're going to need 40 40-inch strips. And this is what I did in the example video when I sewed a Jelly Roll race quilt earlier. This is a typical Jelly Roll race quilt, is that 40-inch strips. If you cut them in half and you use the 20-inch strips, you're going to need 80 of them. All you're doing is you're taking these strips right here, chopping them in half. You can add in and, cut them into smaller bits. If you cut them really, really, really small, I might suggest adding an extra strip or two in there just to make sure. But if you're making a lap size quilt, the quilt size is relative, okay? This is kind of what we're shooting for in here, but it does not have to be that exact number. Now, if you are making a twin size quilt, you're going to shoot for 64 inches by 88 inches. Okay, that will fit on a twin sized bed. In order to do that, I'm going to tell you what you need here, but there is a couple little differences in the final product, okay? But let's get with what we need first. You'll need 70 40-inch strips, or 140 20-inch strips. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, okay? And it is a lot. You're making a twin-sized quilt, and you're using the 2.5-inch strips, okay? That's what this formula is right here. You're using the 2.5-inch standard Jelly Roll strips. I'll show you in just a few minutes, if you want to cut your own strips, how to figure out how much you'll need. Okay, let me show you what you're going to do, because technically when you make the twin size quilt, you're going to end up making 2 of them, okay? So if you have 2 sets, when you are finished with each set, let me write that down again. So you're going to have 2 sets with half of the strips. Okay, that's either 35 or 70. Okay, this is the 40-inch, and this is the 20-inch. Okay, so what you're going to do is you are going to make a Jelly Roll quilt that is like that, and a Jelly Roll quilt that is like that. Sorry, they're going to be the same size. I know I drew them off, but they're going to be the same size. Okay, so you're going to have your beautiful Jelly Roll quilt. All the strips are sewn together, and now you have 2 of them. And it's your typical Jelly Roll quilt with all these lovely lines through it. You may have some smaller pieces, you may have some bigger pieces. So once you have 2 of them, they're each going to be about 87.5 by 32.5. Okay, so that's what each of these sizes are. Then you're going to sew these 2 together. That is going to give you your final size of 64 by 88. And like I said, roughly, okay? If that tiny, tiny fraction of an inch, let's see, I've got 87.5 here and it's really 88 here. If that really bothers you, you can add just a little bit more, or you can add a border or something to it that makes it all together. Generally, you're not going to be able to see the difference in these 2 pieces right here, okay? Because all of these fabrics are just going to blend right into each other. And if you make sure and you nest your seams, boop, link right up there on nesting your seams. Nobody's ever gonna know that these are like two different pieces, okay? You're just gonna see this explosion of color and beautiful, beautiful fabrics all coming together to make a beautiful large size twin bed. Okay, so this method, moving forward, you're gonna need to know this, okay? Because the bigger you go, the more pieces you're gonna have to do to make this, okay? So let's move on to the queen size, okay? Keep this in mind. You're gonna need to come back to this. Let's move on to the queen size bed, okay? So a queen size quilt is like this, okay? You are going to need 105 40-inch strips or 210 20-inch strips. Okay, you're going to do the exact same thing here, except you're going to divide this number by 3, okay? So you are actually going to make 3 of this that we were talking about right here. Ignore that line right there, okay? You are going to make 3 of these, and then you're going to sew them side by side. That is going to give you your queen size quilt, okay? So they're going to be 87.5 inches by 32.5 inches, roughly. This is like the actual math part of it. If you come in just a little bit short or a little bit different, that's okay. Okay, you're gonna sew them together side by side. Your standard queen size quilt is 86 by 93, okay? What this method comes out to is going to be 87.5 by 96.5. Okay, so this is what your, let's do this. Let's do your jelly roll. Using these numbers up here, this is what your jelly roll is going to come out to. Okay, so this one, you're gonna do 3 of them, whereas the twin, you were doing 2 of them. So once you get to this, you can either trim it down to be the standard size quilt, or you can just leave it as is and have just a little bit of extra on there. It does not bother me to have just a little bit of extra on there. And yes, I have made a queen size jelly roll quilt. It turned out really, really amazing. I'll see if I can pull up some pictures of that so I can show you. Okay, last one, and then we'll get to the create your own size quilt. Okay, let's go with the king size quilt. For the king size quilt, you're going to need 120 40-inch strips, or, come on, you've been following along here, how many 20-inch strips? I totally have my teacher voice on right here, I'm sorry. That'd be 240 20-inch strips. Your standard king, let's do this. Your standard king is going to be 104 by 93. Now we can't quite get this number. What we can get with our jelly roll, let's do our jelly king, is about 100 by 96.5. So, I mean, a little like in the same range, okay? Now, if this really, really bothers you, you can always add on a border, or you can add like a sashing in the middle, or, you know, something to make this fit into the standard roll that you want it to. That's only if it bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, don't worry about it. Make this 100 by 96.5 and you are gold. It's gonna be beautiful, okay? So with the king sized one, you're gonna do the same thing, okay? It's gonna be 3 segments, okay? So 3 segments. That's a really weird 3. Let's fix that. You're gonna do 3 segments, okay? Your 3 segments are going to be 40 strips each. Okay, and that's for the 40-inch ones. You know, if you do the 20-inch strips, it's going to be 80 strips. Okay, so this is the 40-inch. You're going to do 80 strips if you're doing the 20-inch strips, okay? Because, yeah, 20 times 2 is 40. So you're going to need twice as many of the 20-inch strips. And then you're going to stop sewing and cutting and dividing when you get to your 100 inches by 32 and a half inches. Okay, so this is what each of your segments is going to be. Okay, so you're going to do this 3 times. You're going to get to this 100 inches by 32 and a half inches, and it's going to be same as this. All right, so you're going to do, wait till this is 100 inches, and then this is 32 and a half inches, and then you're going to stop. You're going to move on to your next pile of strips, and you're going to do it again, all again. And then you're going to stop, and then you're going to do it one more time, and you're going to join those 3 sections together. And ta-da, you are going to have a ginormous king-size jelly roll quilt. Okay, so we've been through each of these, and remember, check the link below if you want to see all of this written out in like blog post form so that you can take those notes and go forward with it so you're not having to copy my writing while we're doing this video. And I know what you're thinking, but Kristen, what if I want to make my own jelly roll quilt and I want a formula that can get me through everything in life, okay? Let's talk about that. If you want to make a custom size jelly roll quilt, okay, this right here, this is your magic formula, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and write that here because this is what you need to know. If you're about to go rogue and step out on your own and make an amazing jelly roll quilt that is custom sized, this is what you're going to need to know, okay? You can't go rogue all on your own and not have some type of plan. This right here is your plan, okay? Now I'm going to give you the formula and then we're going to walk through it with an example so that you can understand it, because otherwise it's just going to be mush. And if you have to back up and watch this part again, it's okay, because the very first time I heard this and understood it from somebody else, they had to explain it multiple times for me. Because again, math is not my strong point, but quilt math is necessary. So here is the formula. Okay, so you have your width of your quilt times the number of rows divided by 40 is how many strips you're going to need. This is going to help you calculate your formula, okay? This is the formula that is going to help you calculate how much fabric you need, okay? So let's talk about a couple things first. 40 right here, this number is your width of fabric. I know most fabric comes in and it's like 42 inches or 43 inches. You're going to lose a little bit on the selvage and then you're going to lose a little bit on the seams. So let's say roughly 40 inches. Let's start with 40 inches, okay? Now, your number of rows and the width of your quilt. You aren't going to go into this just assuming that you're going to make a quilt of any size. Let's say you have in your mind that you want roughly a quilt that is 80 inches by 96 inches. Okay, this is what you're shooting for. That's the size you said you wanted to make, somewhere in that frame, okay? It may be like just a ½ inch off or something, but that's about the size that you want to make, okay? So your width of your quilt is 80 inches. Okay, and we're going to figure out next how many rows that makes, okay? Because your quilt, remember, your quilt looks like this, all right? So you have all of these rows, okay? And you want to get up to 96 inches. So all of this is going to be 96 inches, okay? Now, this is where you get to decide if you want to use your standard jelly roll, okay? And remember, this is 2.5 inches, but we're not gonna get 2.5 inches out of this. We're gonna take a 1/4 inch off here and a 1/4 inch here, and that's gonna be 2 inches. Now you could do your standard jelly roll, or you could actually cut from yards of fabric and do much bigger pieces of fabric. Let's say you decide that your pieces are each going to be 4 inches tall, okay? Now we know that 4 inches actually means 4.5 inches cut, okay? Because what you're going to see is the 4 inches. That 1/2 inch is going to be lost in your seams from here and here, right? So this is where we do a little bit of math, okay? So we want 96 inches to be about what this is finishing out at. So we're going to 96 inches divided by 4 inches is going to give us 24 rows, okay? So we're going to have 24 rows right here. And we know that our 40 inches are going to be cut at that 4.5 inches, okay? I know I've got a lot of numbers rolling around right here, but just follow with me. So we took the 96 inches and we divided it by 4 inches. That is going to give us 4 plus 4 plus 4, you know, times 24 is going to give us 96 inches. So our width of the quilt is 80. Our number of rows, 24 times 4 inches is going to give us 96. So that is our width and our length. Okay, so let's get that number before we move on. So we've got 80 times 24. That's going to give us a pretty big number. Okay, so that's going to give us 1,920. Okay, now we're going to divide that by 40, which is our width of fabric up here, right? So we've got 1,920 divided by 40 is 48. This right here, that 48, that is how many strips I need to cut at 4.5 inches wide, right? That's how many strips I need to cut at 4.5 inches wide to get this quilt right here. That's how much fabric is going to be needed for this quilt, okay? Now, being that this is an 80-inch quilt, it's probably going to need to be somewhere in the neighborhood of possibly 3 pieces, okay? But that's something that you can look at later, figuring out, you know, what size is this width close to? Is it close to like a standard queen size quilt, or is it closer to a king, or is it closer to a twin? You know, it's a little bit bigger than a twin, so you might be able to get away with 2 pieces, but technically I think you're going to need to do 3 pieces on this particular example. Now I just kind of made this part up, okay? So you need to cut 48 strips. Now, if you did say your strips at not 4 inches, if you did it at 2 inches, you're gonna need double this number of strips, okay? So that's why when I do my own custom jelly roll quilts, and I like to make the strips a little bit thicker than your standard jelly roll, if I'm making just a throw quilt like I did in the example, yeah, your pre-cuts are absolutely wonderful. They're already done for you. Most of the time they're already coordinated, but if you want to do something with your own fabric, piece together your own collection of fabrics and colors and patterns and all of that, this is the formula that you will use. So it is the width of your quilt times the number of rows divided by 40 is how many strips that you will need. Now, if you want to go and figure out how much yardage that is, that's like a whole different level of math, okay? Because that really depends on like how many fabrics you're using, and if you're using scraps or you're using, you know, other pre-cuts and stuff. If you're using pieces that are smaller than 20 inches, or if you're using like small squares to go in between them, then you may, just for the sake of having enough and not too little, it's okay to have a little bit too much. It's not okay to be short. You may add 1 or 2 extra strips in here just to make sure that you are gold on this, okay? I often do that just for what I call sanity's sake, okay? Just add in an extra strip or 2 to make sure that you have enough fabric, because having enough is okay, coming up short is not okay. I hope that that was clear. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments down below. I'll be happy to address them. watch it again if you need to, but this is the magic formula, okay? This is what you need to do if you're going to make a custom size jelly roll quilt. Okay, not that hard, right? I mean, it's a little bit to figure out. It's a little bit to look at it and like step back and like actually do the math. But part of you has to go, you know what, I'm being a very responsible quilter. I'm making sure that I'm not going to get frustrated in the end by using too little fabric. I'm not going to like way overshoot this and use way too much fabric. You're doing a good thing, okay? This few minutes of math in the beginning is going to save you so much time and guesswork in the end. If you are new to quilting, or if you are looking to improve your skills, maybe you don't really have a ton of confidence in your skills and you're like, you know, I kind of, sort of, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but I like doing this. I would like to know what I'm doing. I have a secret to tell you, but I have a class. It's open twice a year and I have not opened it up this year. And I get several emails a week from students that are friends of prior students and they want to take this class and I have not opened it up yet. Y'all, it's coming up soon, okay? I am going to open up my Modern Quilting Made Easy class. I will put a link down to this below so that you can get on the wait list for that class because it does fill up fast. And I have to tell you that the reason I haven't opened it up this year yet is because I have added some really great content to it. You know, the class is amazing as is, okay? It is a complete 8-week course on learning how to quilt the right way, the confident way. You make an amazing quilt by the end of it, okay? From very beginning to the very end, I am with you every step of the way on this class. Keep an eye on your inbox for when that class opens up. I have one more video on jelly roll quilting that I'm going to show you next week. Maybe one more video after that. I haven't quite decided if I want to show you the last project or not. And you know, let me know in the comments what you think about these video series. If you like all that I'm doing with the jelly rolls, you know, maybe we can take on some other pre-cuts later on in the year and I can show you what I do with those because I love these things. I love these things and I love working with them. It makes it easy and you are by no means put into some box when you use pre-cuts. It's just the starting point. So let me know in the comments what you think about those. I look forward to seeing you again next week. I hope that you have a wonderful day and I'll talk to you soon. I'm Kristen with IcyStarsQuilting.com. Bye.